we are not okay. We own generation. There's a lot of us as we grow up now, people are battling different things, whether not financial stability, whether not health crisis. There are people now they live with high blood pressure, person they we don't inherit the gentry of diabetes from your parents. There's a lot going on with us. About self, it's recognizing that the most important person to yourself is written the Americans will say your star player. Possibly we can when you read this in a mirror. And that you see in the mirror is yourself.
Yeah. Many of us, once we begin to realize what adulthood really is and really grasp that sense of independence, you begin to question, in fact, why did you want to grow up in the first place?
We're the last generation that can turn things around. I might be wrong, but why do I say that? Gen Z and obviously. So we have to think bigger, but our generation, again, I will say, we don't need permission.
You're absolutely right.
If we mess it up, that's it.
Welcome to Honestly Speaking, the podcast where we have honest conversations about the issues shaping our lives. I'm your host, Antonia Howard, and today we're talking about that quiet or maybe not so quiet pressure of adulthood. Lately, I've been thinking a lot about this phase of life where many of us are in currently or have at some point experienced, that in between of trying to figure things out while also pretending that you have. The space where you're chasing stability, but also trying to stay visible and trying to make something of yourself, while also trying to just stay sane. The pressure to keep going, to keep proving that you're doing okay, to stay hopeful even when you're not. And for many of us, those of us who have chosen to stay in Sierra Leone or don't even have the choice or the option to leave, the challenge can feel even heavier. Staying grounded, staying hopeful, and still believing that what we're building here matters. So today, we're asking, how do we stay sane while trying to succeed? And what does it look like to build a meaningful life right here where we are inside this Swiss salon? And my guest today is someone who's also been thinking about this and has lived through these questions, or should I say is living these questions, living through these questions. He's a lawyer, a governance specialist, a creative, and I would describe him also as a thoughtful voice of our generation. He is Ibrahim Yusuf Bangura, popularly known as Beloz.
Yes.
Welcome to Honestly Speaking, Beloz.
Thank you very much, Antonia.
So, this is something we've had a brief conversation about, trying to plan this episode and just brainstorming what people relate to mostly in Sierra Leone and waiting are something we all man do experience. So I'll start with your own experience. When you maybe pause and think about, your just general experience or maybe where you are at now, how would you describe adulthood in Sierra Leone?
A big scam, and I know that's.
I should play the soundtrack.
I know we say that all the time, but here's what it is. So I think we're the generation that was ballooned by our parents, maybe as a consequence of the war or things that were happening around us. A lot of us lived in that bubble and that balloon where our parents did everything they could do to ensure that we had normalcy through the war, through the coups, through the run into the Gambia and the Guinea and everything. We had a sense of normalcy. And then we transitioned out of that phase and became adults. And I believe the first question we always ask ourselves is, how they one day am I do am? Because for the most time, you find that, okay, this is not adding up. This is not. And, I have a friend who usually says, our parents did not prepare us. I don't think there is much preparation they could have given us. I just think, like I said, it's a consequence of living in that balloon. So we're sort of protected. And this applies to a chunk of our generation where parents are trying to figure it out, but they want to ensure that we have a normal life. So for me, that's been it, that, wow, this adulting, dear, I can turn picking back, I not do again.
I know. I think many of us, once we begin to realize what adulthood really is and really grasp that sense of independence, like, okay, this is your own journey. You have to figure out what you're doing. You have to figure out everything else. We begin to realize, you begin to ask yourself, so now this I be what? So this is what I was dreaming about growing up. This is not this. You begin to question, in fact, why did you want to grow up in the first place? And I wonder if this is just for millennials, like those between, say, 28, 29, to what, 40, mid-40s?
Yes.
Or this feeling, do you think, is true for Gen Zs?
No, I think this is a millennial thing, because keep in mind that, my mom always says they're the generation that lived through technology and blah, blah, blah. But I also believe that we're also a part of that generation that saw leaps and bounds with technology. We're the aspirational generation, as you can see from the intro self, where you do, I don't do this, we want to, we're trying different things, we're ambitious, we want to think outside of the box. Why have I sit down and just be lawyer? Why can't I be a lawyer and a comedian and mix things up and all of that? So that reality of, things lining up or not lining up, as you say, you realize when we were growing up, we were very restless. Once independence, no. We had access to the mobile phone at an early age, and now we're here, and you realize this journey, and me one gets out. Now, interestingly enough, there was a time when you did not even want your parents to advise. No, I know what they do, not control me. Now, you're on your own, and you're craving someday, you just want your parents to just give you a word of advice on how do I figure this out. So I think with the Gen Zs, it's interesting. And there's such a weird disconnect. So now I have, kids who are Generation Alpha. My younger sister is a Gen Z. My wife is also a millennial, but late millennial. But my kids think I am this old relic. They don't process or understand that I am a millennial. So I think because of, and that's the interesting part, with all the struggles we're going through, the foundations we have laid, I think Gen Zs would potentially get it a bit easier. And to be honest, Gen Zs don't give a damn. I think that's something we worry. No, Gen Zs don't worry, which I think could be a blessing.
Why do you think we worry so much? Waiting they create the pressure for we. I know in my head how I think about it. I think perhaps maybe social media plays a huge role nowadays in just trying to keep up, trying to show up or prove that you're showing up, whatever it is. But there's just this pressure that I don't know how to explain.
Social media, definitely. If you follow the hype now, social media, sometimes, to be honest, I go through my social media feed, I look at my feed and all the things I share, the happy dancing videos and all of that. I'm like, yeah, probably the given and the impression say okay on this side when it's not okay. But that's the beauty of social media. Nobody goes out there potentially and shares, the struggles, the sad stories and everything, because sometimes some of these things you don't want to talk about so openly.
Yeah.
But I also, interestingly enough, I also think it's the pressures of the generation before, so our parents' generation, because when you think about it, significantly, most of our parents, and across the piece, they struggled. They took the family out of that, whether it is now poverty for those of us whose grandparents were poor, or, even with people whose grandparents were just a part of the civil service, had an okay life. We have parents that were also overachievers. I think they're the baby boomers and all of that. They're called that name for a reason. So now we are the continuers and we have to preserve that name. So now, like, if you don't run a race, that person where they run the race, they don't run, they can't give you the baton. Who done are you for if this baton now? There's also that pressure. So I think it's those two things for me.
Does Sierra Leone give this generation the permission to rest?
No. Sierra Leone, like you always say, in a boot camp, I think, and I also, but let me caveat this by saying I don't take for granted the privilege some of us have. I recognize and realize that the struggle is harder for a whole lot more people in our generation.
Yeah.
But my God, sometimes I sit down and think, life not for these arts, and arts for me in the sense, the really little things. I tell people the biggest struggle I have, for instance, put aside the basics that we struggle with, Edsa de Gimme, that I get for one after Guma Valley. It's also, we're now adults, now big man. You get people the way they work for you. And the hardest thing to do is I have to go to work and think and figure it out and make money to come and pay you. But at the same time, you're working for me and I have to think for you as well. Because why I give you assignment, half of the time you're going to fumble, you're not going to do it the way. That's a really tough job. So you find that you're constantly working, whether professionally or even at home, because those persons that you have left your home to, that are taking care of the home, 3/4 of the time, you get for the behind them. They make sure say they do things the right way. Then they will say, this man gets none, this and that. No, I don't get none. I just know there's a right way to do it and you're not doing it.
Yeah, I think about that a lot too. And how your brain barely goes to sleep. Because even when you don't done what you're supposed to do for the day and what other people are meant to be doing that, that you have taken on, you then think about, okay, what's tomorrow going to be like? And then for me, they begin to overshoot one time.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I come, lights not there, I get for do. Okay, so what's the second option if this doesn't work? And your brain just keeps going and it keeps going. What do you think is a good, what's in a good practice just to keep that sanity? What do you think, maybe from your own experience, what is a good way to just pause and take a break if you need to, if you have the option to?
I think constantly reminding yourself that you probably not done. We said this thing. No, I'm serious. We said these things in jest sometimes when we talk that, it's how we sit down, man, when they talk, then you go grumble, where somebody want go say, salon in grumble, they done there, let me go. I think if you consciously remind yourself of that, you can forgive yourself for just pausing and recognizing that. And maybe it's not the best solution for say, the problem I just they push a normal bag for deal with them. But you also have to understand that there's such a thing as burnout. There's such a thing as a mental breakdown. There's such a thing as just fatigue and exhaustion. So if you keep going, you're constantly troubleshooting, you're constantly, it gets to a point where it will affect your health. I think one of the things we potentially don't pay attention to is our mental health and mental wellness. I think, as I have said, we're that generation that continually wants to keep doing. We're constantly reinventing ourselves. Yeah. I have been so many things in this very short period that, there's always that need that I need to keep pushing. And sometimes you have to recognize if being in certain places, doing certain things does not bring you happiness or joy. And I think a lot of people overlook that. A long time ago, so I have friends who, if they want to invite me, and this goes back to many, many years, they want to invite me to an event. So man go call and cost me. Beloz, I bad invite you, not a good side. Because I think I am grateful for a lot of self-awareness to recognize that if I go this business, will I really? And like, yeah, no, I really no need for go this business. Because again, Antonia, why would you want to go somewhere or be in a space where your energy is just low? And for people like myself, I am big energy. Yeah, like my closest friends will say, people don't realize, but there's Ibrahim, there's Beloz. There's Beloz way, Nain, Chrisman, almost have been a public, but there's Ibrahim who's the calm, just likes his space. The real only child, I like for Dynami bubble. And sometimes for people like me, the struggle is if I'm not at my full energy, because when Beloz goes on side, So for instance, if I'm somewhere, you say I sit down quiet, your first thought is going to be, what's in the Beloz?
Something else.
Yeah, something. This is not a sit down one place. Not this one side, not jump, not dance. So it's recognizing that if I don't feel at my optimum, I'd rather stay home and just sit things out.
In the intro, I mentioned people living in Sierra Leone specifically, those who've chosen to stay if they had the choice to leave, but then decide to say, okay, this is home, this is where I'm going to build. And some just don't even have the option to leave. Waiting for that added pressure. What makes living in Sierra Leone or working in Sierra Leone its own kind of different or its own kind of unique or challenging?
I think for me, two things. Interestingly enough, I grew up never wanting a second passport. Boy, do I regret that. I was on that proud Sierra Leonean, the country we now they can't change things, no they go no side. Yes, of course, my mom was not big, so I not pretend like the first choice was mine. My mom was like, you're going nowhere, you're too much trouble, you're staying in Sierra Leone. But even when I got to that point where I could have now gone off and everything, I was keen on staying in Sierra Leone because I've always loved this country. I've always recognized that home is where it is, like my fondest memories, everything is Sierra Leone. But I think there's a real struggle in the sense that for me now, I tell people, if I were to leave or if an opportunity presents itself and I decide to leave, it is going to be for the simplest of things, like wake na morning, wa puts me water ita on, warm water de komo, awas. That wa puts me top up na mi meter, like my electricity is going to be there. If I want to leave the light switch on for 24 hours, I can leave it on for 24 hours. That I don't have to have a headache about my car breaking down and I don't have genuine parts. So the little things. And I tell you, people will listen and think, you're better. I didn't see any day honor you. But it's the things we take for granted. Because at the end of the day, the biggest struggle and the biggest frustration that I find is knowing that there can be better or there should be better, or even being able to afford better, and better is unavailable to you. So I think fundamentally that's one. But also, there's something I've come to learn over the last few years. That now, because we're in a country where there's this bulge of we generation, a lot of people coming of age, it's like a crab in a barrel mentality. So most times when you try to work with, people in your generation, all man, they look for score goal per you. You would be amazed. You go into business, possibly not expect to go hold your hand under water. Like people, the opportunity presents, somebody, they go back, bite you, and the word go come back to you, go be like, but the guy ain't talking down about me. Because now we're at a place where there's competition for scarce and, limited resources and everything. So, like, people just feel, I need for do it, I need for do for survive. There's no more that thing of, no, Antonia na me person. No way, no how, I no go waka and war. If it means me no go get, I no get. So for me, I think it's those two things, really.
What do you think, say the cause, Dandy? I ask because that's also a big part of this podcast, talking about mindset, talking about culture, behavior, accountability, and you just pointed out something that is very important. If you know someone, you're working with someone, okay, I don't sabi Beloz for this long, we're going into business together. Whose reason I get for do you bad? What causes that? I know you said it's we're fighting for limited resources. But shouldn't we have stronger values and morals than that? So go backstab you, brother.
We really should, but and I'm one person who I'm not keen when people go back to the war. But I think that happened. And then there is, so like I mentioned, we're kids of the war. There were those of us, were privileged enough to be in a balloon and whatever. And there were those who lost parents or at an early age, and therefore begin to fend for themselves and everything because the war had caused its own problems. So I feel we skipped over some of these basic, we go say na home training. Minute things that sometimes you engage some people, and even the way that they talk to you, you're like, because now obviously you're working, you'd employ people in a way, most times until at the same age,
Yeah.
you go talk to you. I'm like, no, talk to, why they talk so? Like, I don't understand. Like, how? So I think there's definitely that element, but also here's what it is. The other day, I was having a conversation with a family friend, and I said, I find that the biggest challenge now in Sierra Leone is that, and it's interesting because every time I hear people in government talking about leapfrogging, I get so triggered. Because I think from a socioeconomic perspective, that is what people have tried to do, and when I don't cause problems. So let me explain. My parents came from abject poverty. Okay, nothing. Mama waka, barefoot go school, load pan wude lorry. The story is out.
And there. If you haven't seen the movie done by, I think directed by Phoebe and Swill, you should watch out for it.
Absolutely. I think it's called Wathibera or something.
Yes, Wathibera.
Yeah. So went through the struggle, battle. Same story with my dad, Daddy, Papa, sell all we get for make sure so them picking get education. They gave me the life that I have, now a better life to what they had growing up. So obviously, when I went to school and everything, I was at a place where people can afford for give me transport. If even Motkan always they, if I don't misbehave, and say Motkan they go take you, get for take transport and all of that. So I never walked to school, I never go school barefoot and everything. And when I went to university, first car my dad gave me, and can call them that Bangura Benz, old-time Benz. And that was my first car. I say all of that to say that na like Pikin, I did ledona imbele, I did drag imbele, I creep, I ultimap, I waka. What that means is that my kids, I strive to give them a better life than I had. Coming back to the Sierra Leonean context, we are in a place where we have gone into the world, we have met a lot of people, and those persons in our generation who are supposed to be the transitioning people like our parents did for set that foundation so that their kids will be what I was. Now there's that need for leapfrog. So the reality is, the comparison is, no, I have people in my generation where, na G-Wagon then they drive now. So me say for drive G-Wagon. What then happens? We then put in a government who see money where for take it, go kapua. Because why this? But remember, say this you party, you begin to drive Bangura Benz when me they broke down pana or feel the left hand street. You don't want to drive the Bangura Benz. You want to drive that G-Wagon. And I know that is potentially such a politically incorrect thing to say, but fundamentally, I find that no problem than the NASA alone, where now there's not that step by step. All my want reach, so it's fast money, it's quick success. Nobody wants to put in the hard work. Nobody. All man just wants, and how? And I think coming back finally to the thought of, even as a country, I feel that is where we struggle. Because we all want ladies salon make, but we are not ready as a people for make the sacrifices for ladies salon make. Because why me for sacrifice? We saw man don't reach, now me for can say me not the rich side, eh? So yeah, but that's my thoughts anyway.
That's very interesting. I think we'll go into that, but I want to ask, what should be the determinants for success. How do you know, now this way salon, how do you know that, okay, I am successful, or how should people define success based on, different backgrounds, different stages? Waiting, you go say, a good description or determinant for success.
I don't know that I have the answer to that, but it's got me thinking about what really we consider success. Because true, Antonia, just if people sit down, they look around, they will say, you successful, me successful.
I would agree. No, you would agree to a certain extent.
Absolutely.
You understand? But for some people, success would mean we're getting $1 million from something like this. Like, you get a huge amount of money from whatever you're doing. So I don't know.
So maybe the conversation there is about not tying success to financial gain, because the point I was trying to make is we all the successful ones. So now they watch me bank account. I don't understand. We see they go on right now. So not tying it to that, but also maybe trying not so hard to tie it to milestones, because as you say, if you think I am, you're putting out the podcast every week, you've done X number of episodes, and that looks like success. But I would say potentially looking at success from an impact perspective. Because at the end of the day, I feel as humans, and we all know this, life is transient, a stage where you play your part. Potentially, you want to be at a place where when you stop doing what you're doing, when people look back and able for, say, this person made a mark here, I think that really is true success. There have been people in this country where when you mention their name, like people have, I think you say like, yes, we don't give people their flowers when they're alive and everything, but there are people, when their names are mentioned, people are like, yes, this is something good person. They do a lot of things. So for me, I think that's really what we should be leaning towards, maybe reevaluating our idea of what success looks like. Because again, as you say, for most of us, and that's where I also am very quick to say, we should not take our privilege for granted, because as we the Bangura, we're looking to go forward. You understand that there's a lot of people where they'll give anything, or they'll give them right arm for trade places with we.
Yeah.
We feel like, no, don't reach you, sir, one for reach you, because your own target is different, or it keeps
That's
moving.
another facet of this conversation. It's like, how do you know you don't reach the peak? We talked about this. People who reach their peak very early in maybe a certain occupation or in some field or career, and the only way after you don't reach the top, waiting for kandong, and just navigating that as well can be challenging.
There was a time when I used to think that, yes, if you don't go up to if you reach up now, no sign, no day for go, you able to shatter the glass ceiling. Even there's not a glass ceiling, there's just, the summits. The only way na for calm down. And then I got to a point I realized that, and I think there's this quote, or there's a book that somebody wrote about it, that it's not always up and down. Have you thought about going out? Have you thought about going around? Like, there's so many ways around that. And for me, again, coming back to the organization, it was that recognition that if we would not therefore go up, but it gets no local, I can go out. I think that's the one side of it. The second side of it is recognizing that there's always something different you can do. I tell people for the longest time, and this makes sense with even our school curriculum, the thing that we didn't teach you in our school, geography, maths, this and that, almost tell me they use them, physics. What do they use them for now? But when you think about it, education gives you a foundation. So I also know that when you have been working, you have been a professional for X number of years, that experience, it counts. Sometimes you don't even realize what you're doing, but you're picking up soft skills, so many things. Understand and recognize that when you package, you put all of that together, potentially, you not even need for keep doing what you were doing. We just had this conversation about there was a time when all you could say was, yeah, you're a journalist. But that does not necessarily define you. Yes, it gave you your foundation, there are things you learned there, but guess what? You decided you can take that and go off and do something else. And it doesn't make you any less of a journalist now. It just means you recognize that actually don't learn, give me the freedom.
Yeah.
For go off and try other things and do other things.
Yeah. What does that mean for the average Sierra Leonean today? People there, people always say the average Sierra Leonean, not so people that we didn't have free talk. Just taking a broader look at where we are, and the reality of many young people. We know that unemployment is a thing here, as in many parts of the world, but we get our own unique challenges, and just access to opportunities. And so you find that perhaps, for me, I don't realize two things. Either when a young person eventually gets an opportunity, they're all out with it one, yes, and they don't really know how to navigate, okay, I've done all I can here. What's the next step for me? That's not necessarily a thought process. You go find people that don't work in a place 5-10 years. Very different for the generation behind us. Or you have the other side. People they don't know how to recognize the opportunity, first of all, and perhaps when the opportunity comes, it's like, I just there no more, the bank time. And they don't really use their full potential. They don't know that they can learn so much from where they are, and perhaps take that elsewhere. So just looking at that reality, in Sierra Leone, how does that translate?
I think there has to be an understanding and a recognition, first of all, that nobody has this thing figured out. I think let begin day. Let people understand that even those people, those of us who some would say has it together, they do everything right and everything, it's a struggle. We still defect for navigate, for figure it out. But also, there's such a thing as, you mentioned when people are in a job, that sense of security, because what you cannot take for granted is that one way you day and you're able to pay your bills and all of that. And that's a completely dehumanizing feeling. But again, for me, it's understanding that we live in a world now we're so connected, we're interconnected, with social media and all of that the world is a global village. And I say all of this to say that, yes, whilst it is a struggle and everything, but people can dare to dream. Interestingly enough, I can sit down and Sunday and day, every time you see on Sierra Leone news or social media about somebody, don't invent something na salon. Not to me and you, not to we would work in our office. Now somebody somewhere. It tells you that we have people who are creative. So people have to dare to dream. Know that, again, like Kwetia say, think outside of Sierra Leone. Sometimes what you're trying to do is not for Sierra Leone. It's not just for Sierra Leone. But know that if you have a skill set, you have a gift, whatever it is that you're doing, that there's a way you can monetize that. There's a way you can turn that into something else. I always say, I think my own biggest frustration at Sierra Leone is that government now our biggest employer and government now our biggest revenue stream. The private sector struggles and all of that. In other countries that you get big private sector. I think people just need to recognize that, yes, whilst that safe space go give you that security and everything, but the reality is you get to a point where that it no longer takes care of all the things that it's supposed to take care of. So you have to find something different to do. People and they work in an office where you get what a revenue stream. They do half business, some man are makeup artists, they go work and all of that. I would say let people explore. Like dare to dream, dare to navigate, dare to reach for opportunities. Do not ever limit yourself, and by God, do not ever get comfortable. I had a whole chunk of colleagues, some they work recently, and you look and some people have been there 13, 15 years and everything. And yes, I admire them on one side because I recognize that they're the institutional, knowledge of the organization. But I can sit down, they look, say, God have mercy. Me we better waju. So for let me then one grade inside this number of years. But I look at them and sometimes just randomly I can say, send me your CV bar. And I look at their CV, I'm like, so tell me again, what do you still sit down they do now, yeah? Because you realize that even if not a job you want, and go do business, that there are jobs out there that you can get better than what you're getting.
In this conversation we've had, choosing to stay in Sierra Leone, especially for people who have the opportunity to live or the chance for God a country and go do your thing there, it can really be a big decision. Say, okay, absolutely. This is where I'm going to stay. Do you, based on your own experience, do you now think or do you push people to go? Or if not, how do you keep that dare to dream mentality alive?
I think that's is it not paradox? Because, paradox. So here's what I recognize, that there was a time where growing up, you say, so man, go 35 years. Say, what? How possible in the left in country go 35 years, can work and this and that? And I used to judge a lot. I apologize to all those people I judged. Now I get it. There are those people who would think they're better off leaving. I would say if you're leaving, leave for the right reasons. There are those people who would still choose to stay. But here's also what I know, that there's such a thing as going and coming, and there's such a thing as living on two continents. So I don't feel it is necessarily black and white. I think sometimes you can go out to come back and do better. Sometimes you can contribute better from the outside. But fundamentally, it's about recognizing where you can operate at your best. Because there's such a thing. Again, I will say the beauty of the internet and social media, apart from all the one who can depend on salon social media, is that people can see you. I always think about someone like Kevin Doe, DJ Focus. Look where he's gone. Look at the things he has done.
Yeah.
I also think about, even when it comes to entertainment, somebody like Incredible JJ. Look where he's going. And a while back, this was just a kid where we seen video and it's talk about the country song from Kenema and all of that. And now he's traveling and he's getting, random bookings here and there. Fundamentally, and for me, that is the biggest frustration. This is home. No matter where you go, people will ask you, oh, Antonia Howard, where are you from? Even with those people who are other citizens, you have people who would ask you, oh, where are you originally from? Or where are your parents from? No.
Originally.
Yeah, also your grandpa didn't come out. So that is a thing. There has to be that recognition. But as I say, fundamentally, it's about everybody recognizing and appreciating that it's a choice you have to make. Now, if you think, I need to go and come back, or if you think, Mimi, you don't do pan this salon your way name, that's okay too.
And how do you keep believing in Sierra Leone? For the reality for many young people as well right now, this not even people that we can leave if they decide to. They just many people having the perception, and I think I did this episode with Phoebe asking, can we really make it here? People, their idea of success is basically where you don't come on a salon, now you don't make her. And people also young people have the idea that the only way to make it is to leave all their greener pastures outside of Sierra Leone. And that is true. But I think it's important that people realize that no matter where you find yourself, you can make something of yourself. And how do you keep believing that?
I think, so I wouldn't even say necessarily it's about believing anymore, because sometimes you struggle to keep believing. But it's about just that recognition, say, yeah, no more get for me. Help is not coming. Nobody can make here for we. So it is that recognition that, yeah, we don't pull and I'll get for make. And I will say we don't pull because that's the truth. Now we de pull. Now we don't de pull. No foreign and no common no saika. Salon de usai because of the things we do as Sierra Leoneans, the things we have done. We have to get to a place where we recognize that, okay, so until we don't tire for puel, now we're all ready for make. And it's not going to be anybody from no amount of donor funding where it's mankangi. It has to be us as a collective. And interesting enough, so I was on a hike, the breast cancer awareness hike, this past Saturday. Then Geg me go mambo. It was my first time. It's beautiful, but it's brutal. Anyway, I digress. So we're having this conversation about Sierra Leone, how the country done. They will begin to see us with the go up, then don't begin to cut stick them. And say, and man, they want go bill. Road not even they for go up. The man in the bill host, they put the host at the junction. And we were just, reflecting on that. And I said, maybe the problem we have in this country is that we have not collectively agreed as a people that Yadon Puelo, and not to say Yadon Puel as in we're giving up, but when we do accept collectively that, this you don't Puel, you don't bad off, maybe, just maybe, we can all also sit down and agree, say, okay, how? What will they do for go before? So it's like if you have a house, it's falling apart, and there's a part of the family that's, oh, no, move, come on, at this room. If everybody agrees, say, this house they can't for dump away, though, you can able for say, okay, maybe we need for on roof, maybe we need to tear this house down. So, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of agree that, but how do we collectively realize that Nine can be the problem? Because from the conversations that I've had about what we need to do to move forward, what we need to do to fix things, it can seem so far out of reach. Like how this, like I remember asking Dr. Modupe, I'll go Epsilon now, because when he explained, for example, we were talking about leadership, how children can learn, and I think about the example being set for children and what are the possible whose avenue they now wait and go see, then see good example. And the good examples outweigh the bad, because that's another thing. Not to follow, you see, one person they do something. Sometimes the brain plays tricks on you. You go to see something and you think, okay, this is the right way to do it, and then you see 30 other people doing it the wrong way, and you're like, maybe that's the way to do it. If not this one green person in the do and this way, and it can be hard to get that collective movement. So as young Sierra Leoneans, as millennials, what's in we for they think about? Because I think by the data, we make up
we do
a majority of what the population is. So what can we do in our own little way to contribute to that change?
I think, and this is where I struggle sometimes when I hear people talk about whatever you're doing in your own little corner, do it well, make a difference. But our little corner now don't depend. We don't reach us, we don't reach us. So here's what I will say. Believe it or not, those persons that are comfortable and happy with the status quo, and I would dare to say, we're not only salon better. They are unified in that purpose, in things staying broken because they thrive. Somebody a long time ago told me, where you they bang you eight about certain things about Sierra Leone, understand that in the midst of all this chaos, there are those people who are thriving. That if you try to change certain things, that I have worked in government, the resistance to change in government is because you and I would think government is broken, but these broken governments, they work for a lot of people. So we have to step out of our little corners and bond together, recognizing that little corners has not done us any good. People and don't do them, grandparents and don't do them. We have to do things differently, but also that we don't need permission to do some of these things. I say to people quite recently, I was on an interview at Liberty TV, and people reached out and all of that. And everybody that has reached out to me, I have sort of don't give them back talk and say, this country, all my leg for see Chris man, but nobody know I'm born Chris man. Y'all are happy that I went and said some of the things I said on radio. But what's to stop you? Why you not go say them? We all have a voice. And I say to people, I recognize and understand that as somebody whose parent, fought for this country, stood up for the things that were right. And this applied to all of us, the millennials, one way or the other. We parents that all contribute to outside this country. We were on Bonya, Menia, and this is not to exclude them one day we born overseas but choose for come back. There are lots of those people. Or even then one day we don't go overseas and are not still here. Understand that now at this we big age, we some of we they chase some number who been things he will not go reach just now. We all are stakeholder now. You do not need anybody's permission for talk about this country. So let us speak up. Let us stand up. Let us fight and advocate for that which is right. But also let us recognize that there are good people, a lot of good people. I had this conversation, interestingly enough, with Chooks the other day. That most times we can feel like I say, we're in the minority because we know they talk. We set smart. But what if it's a silent majority? What if someone decide not for talk just because it feels say, I mean one, so if I talk nothing. So you know they talk. But what if we all decide for talk and then we realize, that's so boku. Now me they feel so not this boku. So what if? So that's for me, that's what I would say to our generation. All of us, all this country now we own, now we only all left. Look at the people in government. If that does not tell you that now, who get this country right now? Now that not all mama and papa they again. No.
Yeah.
Now we.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And what kind of future do you foresee if that happens? If we all take collective responsibility for Sierra Leone?
I think we can definitely have a better Sierra Leone. I do believe in a better Sierra Leone. Like, listen, when you look at things logically, all that we have, the human resources, the people, the natural resources, Antonia, it don't make sense that we do how they so. But now we the people they're in charge of with destiny. They gave us independence, God knows how many years ago. Now we, this has been, so imagine a retirement age so now, it's alone the feds for chase. This has been us all along. I look at Lamb Runner every morning, and one TV, so I love the bell. Shout out to the bell, not Team Bell, not day. But one thing he says, every time he says, me I go talk to, I ready for go meet me, make I will get for take the risk. I get goosebumps because at the end of the day, you recognize that this is somebody who just don't decide and commit, say, within the belay be. And guess what's tada, nothing don't be. Now I do Timbelly, they ring Gimbella morning, this, yes, and don't gag on social media, yes, I should say threatening text, then go don't come. But he's still there. He's still going. There was a time when you would have thought they would all lock the radio station by now. But the radio station is still open. So let's keep doing. It does not need to be Lamrana alone. There's Lamrana, there's, honestly speaking, we have these platforms. The people that use them platforms. We have a voice, Antonia, as you say. This country, when you look at the leadership of the country now, and Uda dem Bokuna, this country, it's our generation. Our generation, again, I will say, we don't need permission. Let us understand And I will say this before I shut up, that I feel like we're the last generation that can turn things around. I might be wrong, but why do I say that? The Gen Z, they're not busy, no.
I mean, just want to say, I think the thing is we're the last generation that truly cares.
So I can rephrase and put it that way. Gen Z, and then they on a different way name. Generation Alpha, the reality is our kids, the kids of the millennials, most of them have access to opportunity. They understand that the world is not just Sierra Leone. They're on their tablets, young picking them, a 4-year-old sabi guna in my mind phone on Snapchat. It's sabi the filter there, sabi make video and stuff. Me we big so the phrase Snapchat and post Twitter and not for post. This 4-year-old picking sabi Snapchat. That's that generation. That is the generation that invariably is constantly always going to look for avenues to live. Mm-hmm. And most of them have the opportunity to live in the form of other passports. Yeah. Because they are at a place where they're always looking outward and they're exposed to outward via TikTok and all of these things, they will want to live at some point. So, if Gen Z know they can do the work, if Generation Alpha will invariably pick up and leave, there has to be that recognition that we now get the country and now get this country, Antonia. As young as we feel we are, we have to recognize that we'll get this country right now.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
If we mess it up, that's it. We're lost for good. I think it's always ironic when, my dad, so daddy born 1932, whatever generation that was, and there was always this saying of, we own picking the number now. And it's sad when you think about the fact that, in about 10, 15 years, if we don't turn the curve or set this country on the right trajectory, I don't know if go left power. We won't picking there now.
We don't left the baton now to
yes.
them. Yeah, and it's absolutely, sometimes when you think about it deeply, it creates pressure. It creates a lot of pressure. And I think that's one of the main reasons this podcast exists as well, so that we go begin for think. Because I think sometimes we get so consumed by self-survival, which is the first part you address, that we don't necessarily consider the bigger picture. Yeah. And we don't even have the time and space to think about what we're leaving behind for our children, for we grand pikinde, waiting then for takeover as salon. Mm-hmm. And that needs to be a part of the conversation.
Absolutely.
That needs to be a part of the conversation. So I hope that people that will listen to this episode can grasp the idea and begin for take action. And just know that you don't need permission to talk about Sierra Leone, and you really don't need permission to do something for Sierra Leone. So thank you, Mr. Beloz.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time, and thank you for making it to the podcast. That's it for today's episode of Honestly Speaking. Thank you for listening and being a part of these important conversations. If you've enjoyed today's discussion, please like and share. And if you're feeling inspired, do leave a review. I'd love to hear what you think. And of course, carry on the conversation online. Share your thoughts, experiences, and ideas using #HonestlySpeakingSL. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and stay honest.